Hi, it's Steve and Joe from Freshagenda. And Steve, we're back.
Mm,
It's a new week, another negative GDT event.
yes.
So we're back, not just the GDT,
No.
also a bit of highlights from the outlook that we mailed to subscribers earlier this week, Steve.
Yesterday. Day before.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, what day is it? Why don't we start with that, just for a bit of context?
So look, let's do one page wrap of the major issues. These aren't all the issues, but
Mm-hmm.
this is a good overview. By commodity, bullish and bearish factors. To know what it means for fundamental values, to know the intensity of these directions, you have to get the product. But let's just run through. So skim milk powder, we're a bit balanced on this.
Yeah, look, I'm going to reveal to the audience that earlier you actually had green on the on SMP there.
Yeah.
You're a bit confident, and when I challenged you on it, you've taken the green away.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with the audience. It's good though. Um, yeah, look, I think there's a lot that could go wrong from here. I think we've got some worries about whether China's really growing its requirements now. We'll see that on GDT. They're certainly buying more there, but we think they're probably overstocked. There's certainly some risks in Southeast Asia, even though we'd expect that to start coming back.
Yeah.
And the demand in Europe in food processing sectors, that is improving gradually. But again, it's later before we see that in the actual orders that might come through.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest issue that might be bullish for this is the fact that milk is going to slow in Europe and the US at a gradual pace,
Yes.
and Mexico is still buying quite well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very mixed.
So that might balance out the New Zealand
Yeah.
availability issues. So fat, much more bearish overall.
The biggest factor there is more availability out of the New Zealand sector
Mm-hmm.
that's persisting, and trade recovery is quite weak.
Yeah.
Still think that's still pretty disappointing.
Cheese.
Tighter in the US. Let's talk about world prices here. I think that's probably got some upside.
Yeah.
The US is certainly tighter, and they got spooked by the milk production reports
Sure.
last week. But
That wasn't borne out in the GDT, but we'll get to that.
yeah,
And whole milk powder, obviously, just the lower demand from China is the number 1, 2, 3, 4 issue.
yeah, it is. And the demand from other markets certainly hasn't offset it. New Zealand's doing the best to balance that by cutting production, and that's a juggling act that's going to keep going on. But there's no reason to think that's a bullish factor.
Sure.
Whey is bearish. Weight on the right hand side there, but there's some improvement in demand of the higher WPCs, WPIs. They're coming back at low prices, but still a heavy balance sheet because of the feed demand being pretty weak, and that's going to take a while to work out.
So you wouldn't know it from this, Steve, but actually the overall overview from the latest Global Dairy Directions update was actually a little more positive,
It was a bit,
even
yeah.
though we've got all these red
Yeah.
squares.
Look, we're close to turning the corner.
Yes.
I think that's right. Some things can go wrong. There's some watch outs
Mm-hmm.
that are probably being more threatening to the supply side
Sure.
of the complex from where we sit. And the continuing poor results on GDT are weighing on that New Zealand output, which is the next big one to reveal, I guess.
Yes.
But that's prices are going to be below 750. There's going to be caution there for producers at that level. But so many things that could go wrong with crops, with that Russian aggression increasing, and the conflict seems to be getting worse, and that's still threatening access to markets for Ukraine's food crops. So that's hanging out there.
Mm-hmm.
And the US could cull much faster than what we've got in our outlook. That's just a wait and see. And those supply side, those demand side things they're all fairly negative as well, really.
Yeah, they've been there for a while, but
yeah,
still watching.
Yeah.
As we do.
Maybe the front of our outlook was expressing some hope that we've almost got the lows in the rearview mirror, but yeah. All right.
So more run up to the GDT, and actually futures were looking a bit more positive leading up to this, Steve, than they had been in previous weeks.
Yeah, Europe is a little better. Fat certainly both in spot and in forward prices was looking better. The US, the big correction in cheese lifted everything.
Yeah.
And just whether that lasts, and you see it fades in terms of futures prices later, but it dragged up skim milk powder or non-fat as well, because of the general feeling that milk is going to be much tighter.
Yeah, it's a pretty flat forward curve there, though, isn't it? Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. The other thing, don't forget this, because this had a big influence on this event. This happened in mid-June. There was a restatement and bringing forward of volumes for milk powders from Fonterra on GDT, and there were some, meaningful lumps of product brought forward from later in the season in both cases. And guess what happened? When you have a weak market and you increase the volumes, they're increasing seasonally, and you bring some more, you get whacked.
Yeah.
And whole milk powder got whacked.
It certainly did, down 8% overall, Steve.
Yeah, it's the lowest, so it's the biggest drop for some time since several years, 6 years, I think we worked out.
More mix there for fats. It's all over the place, in fact.
It's absolutely all over the place. Yeah, and you try to make sense of that. I mean, it's probably leveled out forward prices to some extent in that. And cheese also pretty confusing, but let's go around. I mean, we've seen, prices lifting, as we showed in the futures. Those spot prices have been lifting generally.
Yeah.
Until this, and it makes New Zealand product pretty cheap.
It does. Bargains
so
to be had.
The two major product lines, regular whole milk powder, medium heat, skim, both well down. Interestingly, the European and US prices went up in both cases.
It's really New Zealand product that got here
because of the availability. So that's going to weigh further. So and you said that chart we showed earlier, there's more skim milk powder coming.
Sure.
That's still rising seasonally. So
yeah,
happy days. So that comparison, I said the New Zealand futures will adjust.
Yes.
This is where they were this morning. So we have a day of trade in response to what's occurred. May pull that down. The cheese price, interesting, and a bit of context for cheese in that, we've had this theory the last few months that the US is driving down the GDT result here, and that's showing the most recently available NDPSR result. So it's a little behind the spot quotes. So that'll come out and lift, but that might, if that is stable and moves up, that might lift GDT and cheese going forward.
Sure.
So demand,
pretty weak there for the powders. Yeah.
And when you look at the, whole milk, we had this problem with skim milk a few events ago where it was just steadily falling each time. And now we've got the same with whole milk, getting worse with more volume coming. Guess what? And then this interesting skim milk powder result, because it opened very badly and yet we had a very small decline.
Yeah, it just seemed to hang on for all those rounds.
So it's interesting how that tail is enough to keep the result from crashing further, when really you got the same, this line looks exactly the same as the whole milk line.
It does.
And yet this one stayed at. So that's a real go figure. But
I love how you're pointing to the screen. No one can see.
No one can see that. Yeah, but I am illustrating.
He's pointing to those charts, folks.
I'm still a very analog guy, really. I do. AMF, profoundly weaker than, even though that's not much overall, but again that hail sort of drags it out and doesn't fall in a heap. Probably kept it from falling a lot harder. But
because those early rounds, it was a precipitous fall, really. Yeah.
It was like, oh, I'm in the wrong room.
Interesting.
Some buying trends. China is buying whole milk powder. A lot of people ask us, oh, they're not there. They are buying whole milk powder, and it's not far off last year. And this event was better. They've gone up to the highest percentage for a while.
Yeah.
So it is happening. The other one we're looking at, Middle East is always after a bargain.
Yes.
And they lifted their buying in whole milk powder, and they also did in fats, and I'll come to that. China also buying a lot more skim milk powder. And this, to me, this is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
On the left-hand side, because I thought this would fade a bit.
Yes.
Southeast Asia did the fading. They usually take turnabout.
They do, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some relativities. The AMF discount widened to nearly $1,000. And again, we've seen whole milk powder, after sticking around with the other guys for a while, it's dropped well below.
It's a bargain again.
It is.
As the Middle Eastern buyers apparently know.
That's right. That's right. A check on the New Zealand milk value. So the spot value of this event fell below $7, $6.90. That line is for the right-hand axis, I believe, but it's dropped below that. And what we've reworked there is we've put this back into our model for the forecast using GDT results of that, including this one, obviously, and the futures beyond those periods. And we're down to 745. I think this will fall further because the futures probably respond to this result.
And interesting, the latest round of fixed milk price contracts from Fonterra that went out for July, only 18 took them up at 755, I think it was. Very low volume taken up compared to the prior months.
Yeah.
So perhaps some farmers expect it to get better.
Well, the futures market's hanging around at $7.70 each.
Yeah.
For this event, so maybe that's what they're looking at.
Yeah, perhaps, but yeah, not much interest at that price, but there's still a few months of offers to go, so interesting.
I think 750 is going to look hopeful.
Yeah,
let's see. Yeah, interesting. Okay, chart of the week, Joe.
It bounces in and it gets us every time.
What have you got? There it is. It finally unveils itself, and this is another chart.
Yeah, so chart of the week. Bring it back home this time, Steve. Some may be aware we talk a lot about the El Nino. Our own Bureau of Meteorology has not actually officially declared an El Nino yet because there are some anomalies with the heightened ocean temperatures are not getting the expected atmospheric response that they would expect for an El Nino. That's not happened yet. Basically, we're in, dare I say it, pardon the pun, uncharted waters in terms of how hot the oceans are and the fact that the atmosphere is not responding. We've had some very warm weather for winter in Eastern Australia. But the outlook out to October is for drier conditions and warmer temperatures, leading into sort of our spring and then the winter crop harvesting period. We do have this buffer though, Steve, that we have had very wet conditions and those water storages are extremely full.
Yeah, I should point out the big three storages in the southern systems are the three on the left-hand side. The first two are on the Murray, and the Eildon is a river, the Goulburn, that flows into that. So that's rarely been this full for this long.
So we do have a bit of a buffer there. But just interesting, the Bureau of Meteorology has said they'll probably declare the El Nino in the next couple of weeks. But just reflecting, we're seeing all this incredible weather coming out of the Northern Hemisphere, and we're kind of bracing ourselves down here for this summer. But it is certainly, according to our Bureau, messing with our climate system as well.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah.
All right. That's all from us. Thanks for watching. I'm really pleased to say that this week I didn't do all the talking. We'll see you next time.